My in-laws skipped my parents' funeral, but months later, they came to me demanding $60,000 for their son's wedding. Stay with me as I tell you everything, because this isn't just about money, it's about respect, love, and how people reveal their true colors when you're at your lowest. My name is Naomi Ellington, I'm 29 years old, and I live in North Carolina. I never thought my life would turn upside down the way it did last year. My parents were everything to me. They weren't just mom and dad, they were my best friends, my safety net, the people who cheered for me no matter what. Then one evening, I got a phone call that shattered me. They had been in a terrible car accident. By the time I reached the hospital, they were gone. Just like that, my whole world felt empty. I can't even put into words the pain of planning their funeral. Picking out the casket, choosing flowers, hearing people tell me how sorry they were when I just wanted my parents back. Through all that, I believed one thing would give me some comfort. That my husband Aaron's family, the Caldwells, would be there to stand beside me. They always acted like family mattered so much to them, so I assumed they'd show up. But they didn't. Not a single one of them came. Not Aaron's mother Judith, not his father Franklin, not even his younger brother Caleb. They sent me a short text message. We're sending prayers your way. That was it. No hug, no presents, not even flowers. I told myself maybe they were busy, maybe something came up, but deep down I knew the truth. They just didn't care enough. On the day of the funeral, I stood there at the graveside with my heart breaking, and all I could see were the empty seats where my in-laws should have been. I looked at Aaron, hoping he would at least say something about it, but he avoided my eyes. I felt abandoned not just by them, but by him too. When everyone went home that night, I sat alone in my parents' house, surrounded by their pictures and memories. The silence was heavy. That's when it hit me. My marriage was never going to feel balanced if Aaron's family kept treating me like an outsider. I swallowed the pain and stayed quiet, telling myself it wasn't worth a fight, but inside, I felt something break. My parents deserved dignity, they deserved respect. And the people who should have been there to support me chose not to show up at all. At that moment, I didn't know it yet, but that was the day the Caldwells began to lose me forever. After the funeral, I kept waiting for something more from Aaron's family. A call, a visit, maybe even a card in the mail. But nothing came. All I had was that short text from Judith and Franklin, the kind of message you could send to a coworker you barely know. Our thoughts and prayers are with you. That was it. My parents raised me with love and respect, and yet their memory was brushed aside like it meant nothing. I tried to talk to Aaron about it one evening while we were sitting at the kitchen table. I told him how much it hurt me that his family didn't come, how much it mattered that they weren't there during the hardest moment of my life. Instead of understanding, Aaron gave me excuses. He said things like, "My mom doesn't like funerals, they make her uncomfortable," or "Dad had a lot going on at work." Every excuse felt like a slap in the face. I didn't need reasons, I needed support. The more Aaron spoke, the more I realized he wasn't on my side. He was more worried about defending his parents than acknowledging my pain. He leaned back in his chair and said, "Naomi, they sent their prayers. Isn't that enough? You can't expect people to drop everything." His words cut me. These weren't just people. They were supposed to be my family too. At night, I would lie awake replaying everything in my head. The silence of their absence at the funeral, Aaron's dismissive tone, the way he avoided looking at me when I cried. I started to feel like I was mourning alone. Even when Aaron sat next to me, it was like there was a wall between us. What hurt the most was that my parents had always welcomed Aaron. They treated him like their own son, cooked his favorite meals, celebrated his achievements as if they were his biggest fans. And yet, when it was their turn to be honored and remembered, his family couldn't even spare a day. That thought made me angry in a way I couldn't shake. I began to resent the Caldwells more each day. I didn't show it openly, but inside I was boiling. Every time Judith sent a casual text about something meaningless or Franklin bragged about his latest project at work, I wanted to scream. How could they act so normal when they had disrespected my parents' memory so completely? Aaron, on the other hand, avoided the topic altogether. Whenever I tried to bring it up, he'd change the subject or say, "Let's not dwell on the past." But it wasn't the past for me. It was my present, my grief, and my loneliness. The man I thought would stand beside me was slipping further away, and I didn't know how to pull him back. That was when I first felt the marriage begin to strain. It wasn't about shouting or fighting. It was about silence, excuses, and a deep emptiness that words couldn't fix. A few months passed after the funeral, and I was finally starting to breathe again. The grief was still there, heavy on my chest every morning, but I was learning how to carry it. I kept myself busy with work and small routines, trying not to dwell on how alone I had felt during the hardest time of my life. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call from Judith. Her tone was overly sweet, the kind of voice people use when they want something. She asked how I was doing, as if she actually cared. Before I could even answer fully, she launched into her real reason for calling. "Naomi," she said, "we need your help. Caleb's wedding is coming up, and we're hoping you and Aaron can contribute. About $60,000 should cover what's left." I froze. $60,000? My heart started racing. This was the same woman who didn't show up when I buried my parents. The same family that sent me a lazy text instead of standing with me when I was shattered. And now they wanted me to fund a party for their younger son? I stayed calm, even though my stomach turned. I told Judith as politely as I could, "I'm sorry, but we don't have that kind of money to spare right now." I thought that would end it. Instead, she scoffed. Her voice hardened. "Naomi, this is family. Caleb deserves the wedding he's always dreamed of. Don't you think it's selfish to hold back when you and Aaron are in a good position?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Selfish? My parents had worked hard their entire lives to give me something, and part of that was the small inheritance they left behind. That money wasn't for showy weddings or catering bills. It was for security for the future. The thought of handing it over to people who couldn't even respect my grief made my blood boil. I tried to explain again, more firmly this time. I told her it wasn't possible, that Aaron and I had our own responsibilities. But Judith wasn't hearing it. "You've never been very family-oriented, Naomi," she said coldly. "This just proves it. You only think about yourself." Those words stung deeper than she knew. I had given everything to Aaron's family, even when they gave nothing back. I cooked for holidays, I showed up for birthdays, I sent thoughtful gifts. But because I wouldn't hand over $60,000, suddenly I was the outsider, the selfish one. When I hung up, my hands were shaking. I kept replaying her words, the way she made it sound like I was failing some test of loyalty. That night, I told Aaron about the call, expecting him to be as shocked as I was. But the look on his face worried me. Instead of outrage, there was hesitation. Like maybe he was actually considering it. And in that moment, I knew things were about to get worse. One evening, I walked into the living room and heard Aaron on the phone. He didn't notice me at first, and I stayed quiet, half curious and half nervous. His voice was low, but the words were clear enough to sting. "I'll figure something out, Mom. Naomi doesn't have to know. We can cover part of the cost and send it your way." My chest tightened. He was talking about money, our money, like it was his alone to hand out. Worse, he was planning to hide it from me. I stood frozen for a moment, the reality sinking in. After everything I had been through, after his family ignored my parents' funeral, he was still bending over backward to please them. When he hung up, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "So you're planning to give them money behind my back?" My voice cracked, but I didn't care. His head snapped up, and he looked guilty for a split second before putting on that calm, practiced face he always used when defending his parents. "It's not like that," he said quickly. "They just need some help, Naomi. It's for Caleb's wedding. Family comes first." Those 3 words hit me harder than anything else he'd said. Family comes first. But he didn't mean my family. He didn't mean the parents I had just buried, the ones who had welcomed him as their own. He meant his parents, the ones who couldn't be bothered to stand at my side when my world fell apart. "Aaron," I said, trying to steady my voice, "do you hear yourself? You're talking about betrayal. That's what this is. You're willing to take money that isn't yours to give and sneak it to them without even asking me. That's not partnership. That's lying." He sighed and rubbed his forehead, as if I was the one being unreasonable. "Naomi, you always make everything about you. My parents need me. They've done so much for me over the years, and this is just one thing I can do to show them I'm here for them. Why can't you understand that?" The anger rose in me like fire. My parents had done everything for us, too. They had been generous, loving, and supportive in every way. But to Aaron, it didn't matter. His loyalty was chained to Judith and Franklin, no matter how cruel or dismissive they were toward me. That night, something inside me shifted. I realized this wasn't just about money. It was about the imbalance that had been there all along. I had lost my parents, but now I was losing my marriage, too. Not because of distance or lack of love, but because Aaron had chosen his family's approval over my trust. As I lay in bed beside him, staring at the ceiling while he slept, The grief and the anger mixed together until it was hard to tell where one ended and the other began. I knew then that this wasn't something I could ignore. Something had broken, and I wasn't sure it could ever be repaired. I had a bad feeling that night after overhearing Aaron's call, and it wouldn't leave me alone. Something inside told me to check our accounts. I had never been the type to snoop, but this was different. My parents had worked their whole lives to leave me a little cushion, a small inheritance that gave me some peace of mind. I logged into the bank app, my hands trembling, and there it was, a transfer. Several $1,000s had already been sent to Judith and Franklin. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, numb. Then it hit me like a punch to the chest. This wasn't just about Aaron choosing his parents over me anymore. This was my parents' money, money meant to protect me, money tied to their memory, and he had funneled it away without even asking. I felt sick. It was like losing my parents all over again, only this time, it was at the hands of the man who had promised to protect me. When Aaron came home that evening, I couldn't hold back. I met him at the door with the evidence pulled up on my phone. "What is this, Aaron? You took money out of my inheritance and sent it to your parents?" Without even telling me. He froze, then tried to brush it off with a weak excuse. "They needed it, Naomi. It's not a big deal. We'll manage." "Not a big deal?" I snapped, my voice shaking. "That money was from my parents. They worked their whole lives for it, and you just handed it over like it was pocket change for your mom and dad's party. Do you even hear yourself?" Aaron's face hardened, his eyes narrowing the way they always did when he was about to twist things back on me. "You're making everything about yourself again. It's always your pain, your needs. What about my family? They matter too. Why can't you ever see that?" Gaslighting. That's what it was. Instead of owning up to what he'd done, he tried to make me feel selfish for protecting the one thing I had left of my parents. My hands balled into fists at my sides. "No, Aaron. This isn't about me being selfish. This is about you betraying me. You went behind my back, and you gave away something that wasn't yours to give. So I'm telling you right now, it's me or them. You choose." For a second, I hoped he would see how serious I was. But he just shook his head and muttered, "You're being dramatic." That was his choice right there. He didn't even have to say the words. I felt something inside me snap. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I just went quiet, because in that silence, I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to beg for respect anymore. From that moment on, I started planning, not to fix things, but to take back what was mine and make sure his family could never take from me again. The months rolled by, and soon Caleb's wedding became the main topic in the Caldwell household. Invitations went out, vendors were booked, and Judith couldn't stop bragging about how grand the event was going to be. Of course, I was invited, reluctantly, more like expected to attend, as if my presence was just another box they had to tick. From the beginning, I didn't want to go. Every part of me recoiled at the thought of standing there, smiling politely, while they used money stolen from me to put on their big show. But Aaron insisted, saying, "It's family, Naomi. We can't just not show up." So I kept my lips pressed together and agreed, though inside I was boiling. The first time I saw Judith during the preparations, she wasted no time getting under my skin. We were at a dress fitting for Caleb's fiancée, Lydia, when Judith looked me up and down with that smug little smirk of hers. "Well," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness, "at least Naomi could contribute something useful now. That makes me feel better about everything." The words hit me like a slap. I knew what she meant, that I had finally proven my worth by letting them siphon money out of me. She wasn't thanking me. She was mocking me, rubbing salt in the wound. I wanted to snap back, to scream at her in front of everyone, but I didn't. Instead, I forced a smile so tight it hurt my cheeks and nodded. "I'm glad you feel better," I said softly, though every word tasted bitter. On the outside, I played my role. I smiled when people talked about the menu. I listened as Franklin bragged about how much they were spending to impress their guests. I stood beside Aaron when he pretended everything was perfectly normal. But inside I seethed. Each detail about the wedding, each mention of the money, was like another knife twisting in my chest. Every time I saw the flowers they ordered or the custom decorations, I thought about my parents. About how that money was supposed to protect me, to honor what they left behind. Instead, it was being poured into a party for people who had disrespected them at every turn. That's when the decision hardened inside me. If the Caldwells thought I was going to keep quiet, keep smiling, and let them walk all over me, they were wrong. I wasn't going to play along with their game forever. They could laugh at me now, but I was already planning how to turn their perfect day into something they'd never forget. So I smiled, nodded, and stayed calm on the outside. But deep down, I promised myself, their wedding would not go the way they imagined. They thought I was powerless, but they had no idea what was coming. I started by gathering everything I could find: bank statements, transaction histories, old texts, emails, and receipts that showed where the money had gone. I printed copies, took photos, and organized them into folders. Each page felt heavier than the last because it proved what I already suspected. Aaron had moved my parents' money without my permission. Seeing the numbers on paper made it real in a way I hadn't let myself feel until then. Next, I made an appointment with a lawyer I found through a trusted friend. I told the lawyer the whole story, and she listened without interrupting. She didn't tell me to forgive or be quiet. Instead, she walked me through options in clear language I could understand. We talked about filing for divorce, demanding an accounting of our joint finances, and taking legal steps to recover funds taken from my inheritance. She explained how to do it discreetly so the Caldwells wouldn't get wind of my plans before I was ready. That secrecy mattered. If they suspected I was coming for them, they might pull the money back or try to hide assets. The lawyer helped me draft a timeline and a list of evidence strong enough to stand up in court. Bank transfers with dates and times, screenshots of messages, and receipts showing money leaving accounts I had expected to remain untouched. She also recommended getting a forensic accountant involved if necessary, someone who could trace the exact path of the funds and show how the transfers violated legal agreements or my rights as an heir. I felt a little steadier after that meeting. Having a plan and professionals by my side turned my anger into focused action. While I was preparing legally, I quietly started digging into the Caldwell's situation. I asked casual questions when I visited Aaron's parents, scanned public records, and noticed subtle hints during conversations. Mentions of unpaid bills, last-minute vendor changes, and stress about keeping appearances. A neighbor once let slip that Franklin had been calling about overdue invoices. I followed these threads and confirmed what I feared. They were in debt and relied on a lavish wedding to hide their troubles and impress their social circle. That wedding wasn't just celebration. It was a cover story, a performance to keep the facade of wealth intact. Knowing that added fuel to my plan. If their reputation mattered more than honesty, then exposing the truth at the right time would cut deeper than anything I could do in private. I started mapping out a strategy. Secure my legal claim to the money, arrange for evidence to be available at a moment that would cause maximum public impact, and ensure the people who mattered to the Caldwells would hear the truth. I coordinated with my lawyer on timing so the legal filings and the personal reveal would hit in tandem, making it impossible for them to spin the story away. I kept my face calm and my words polite, playing the part of the supportive wife while I lined up the dominoes. Inside, I felt a quiet coldness, not just anger, but a resolve. They had taken from me what was sacred. Now I had a plan to take it back and to show everyone who had been pretending that respect and family weren't things you could buy with a check. The morning of Caleb's wedding, I stood in front of the mirror and took a long breath. My dress was simple but elegant, a deep navy that brought out my skin tone. I wanted to look composed, not like the broken woman they thought they could walk over. As I fastened the necklace my mother had left me, I whispered to myself, "This is for you. This is for both of you." When I arrived at the venue, the Caldwells were buzzing around like royalty. Judith's nose was tilted so high she barely acknowledged me, and Franklin strutted as if the whole event was proof of their success. They didn't know that every flower arrangement, every string quartet note, every polished glass of champagne was about to be overshadowed. I moved quietly through the crowd, greeting a few guests, my smile calm and controlled. Inside, my heart was pounding, but I didn't let it show. I had rehearsed this moment over and over until it felt like muscle memory. The folder tucked in my clutch bag contained everything: the bank transfers, the records of debt, and the proof that Aaron had stolen from me. Just minutes before the ceremony, I found Lydia Myers, Caleb's fiancée, in a side room adjusting her veil. She smiled politely, clearly distracted, but when I held out the folder, my tone was serious enough to make her pause. "You need to see this before you walk down that aisle." Her brows furrowed, but she opened the folder anyway. As her eyes scanned the documents, the color drained from her face. Tears welled up. They told me everything was paid for. They told me Aaron was supporting us willingly. I shook my head softly. They lied, Lydia. The money came from me, from my parents' inheritance. They stole from me, and they're drowning in debt. If you marry into this family today, you're marrying into a lie." Her hands trembled as she clutched the papers, and then she broke down completely. Within minutes, the whispers started spreading. Lydia refusing to walk down the aisle, guests looking confused, Judith snapping at people to stay calm. The chaos hit full force when Lydia's father marched into the main hall and announced that the wedding was off. Gasps filled the air, and all eyes turned to the Caldwells. Judith turned pale, Franklin sputtered excuses, and Caleb stood frozen at the altar. That was my cue. I stepped forward, my voice strong and clear. "Since we're being honest today, I should add something. Aaron stole my inheritance to fund this charade. That money was left to me by my late parents, and I will be taking back every cent. And while we're at it," I held up my hand, showing the wedding ring, "I'll be returning this too. I'm divorcing Aaron." The room erupted. Guests whispered, cameras flashed, and the Caldwells' carefully polished reputation crumbled right in front of them. For the first time in months, I felt the weight lift off my shoulders. They had humiliated me in silence, but now their shame was public, undeniable, and unforgettable. After the disaster at the wedding, I slipped away from the chaos and stepped outside into the cool evening air. My hands were steady, even though my heart was still racing. That's when Aaron found me. He rushed over, his tie crooked, his face pale, desperation written all over him. "Naomi, please," he begged, grabbing at my hands. "We can fix this. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I thought I was helping them. I thought I was doing the right thing. Don't end it like this." I pulled my hands back, keeping my voice calm and cold. "No, Aaron. You made your choice the moment you took my parents' money without asking. You chose them over me every single time. Don't act surprised that I finally chose myself." He tried again, his voice cracking. "I love you. We can talk to my parents, sort something out." I cut him off with a sharp look. "I don't want to talk to them. And I don't want to talk to you about fixing this marriage. You broke it, Aaron. And nothing you say will change that." Inside the venue, Judith and Franklin were being swarmed by angry whispers. Their friends, once eager to bask in their supposed wealth, were now staring with judgment in their eyes. Franklin looked like a man cornered, his voice loud and defensive, while Judith's face was streaked with angry tears. Caleb, red-faced and furious, shoved past them, shouting that Aaron had ruined his life and embarrassed their entire family. For once, I didn't feel small around them. I felt free. In the weeks that followed, I kept my focus steady. With my lawyer's help, I filed the paperwork to separate my finances from Aaron's. Every transfer, every stolen cent was traced and documented. The law was on my side, and soon the accounts were corrected. My parents' inheritance was returned to me, safe where it belonged. The relief I felt was more than financial. It was emotional. I had fought for what my parents left me, and I won. Moving out was easier than I thought it would be. I packed my essentials, left the key on the kitchen counter, and walked away from the house that had turned into a battlefield. Filing for divorce was the final step, and when the papers were signed, I felt lighter than I had in months. For the first time in a long while, I visited the cemetery where my parents rested. I brought fresh flowers and sat by their headstones, letting the quiet surround me. "I did it," I whispered. "I protected what you left me. I didn't let them take it away. I hope I made you proud." The pain of losing them would never vanish, but in that moment, I felt a sense of peace. The Caldwells' greed and cruelty had tried to dishonor my parents' memory, but in the end, I had stood tall. I had defended them, and myself. The new apartment was small but full of light. Sunlight poured through the wide windows each morning, landing across the hardwood floor in golden streaks. It was quiet too, no constant buzzing phone calls from the Caldwells, no heavy silence from Aaron sitting beside me pretending nothing was wrong. For the first time in years, I could breathe freely. I set down the last moving box and looked around. The space wasn't fancy, but it was mine. Every piece of furniture, every picture frame, every detail felt like a choice I made for myself. I was financially secure again, thanks to the inheritance being restored, but the real wealth was peace of mind. I no longer had to second-guess who was taking from me, lying to me, or making me feel small. That chapter was done. As I unpacked, I found one of my mom's old scarves and my dad's wristwatch tucked carefully in a keepsake box. I held them close, my throat tightening. For months, I had carried the pain of losing them, layered with the bitterness of being betrayed by people who should have stood by me. But now that pain was shifting. The grief was still there, but it was no longer chained to resentment. Their memory finally felt safe, untouched by the Caldwells' greed. I thought back to Judith's insults, Franklin's arrogance, Caleb's self-importance, and Aaron's weakness. They had believed I would always bow to them, always put their wants above my own needs. In a way, their betrayal had freed me. By trying to strip me of what mattered most, they pushed me to find a strength I didn't know I had. Without their cruelty, I might still be trapped in a life where my voice was silenced. Instead, I walked away with my dignity, my inheritance, and my freedom intact. A week later, I returned to the cemetery. The autumn air was crisp, leaves crunching under my feet as I carried a bouquet of fresh flowers. I knelt down by my parents' grave, brushing away a few fallen leaves from the headstones. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, Dad," I whispered, my voice soft but steady. "I wanted you to know. I stood up for myself. I stood up for you too. They tried to take what you left me, but I didn't let them. I made sure your memory was honored. And I finally walked away from all the people who didn't deserve to be in my life." Tears stung my eyes, but they were different this time, not of loss, but of release. I placed the flowers carefully, kissed my fingertips, and pressed them to their names carved in stone. As I stood and walked back toward the path, a thought settled in my heart like a final closing chapter. They skipped my parents' funeral, but in the end, I buried the Caldwells' control over my life. And that's the only funeral that mattered. Do you believe Naomi made the right choice by cutting ties with Aaron and his family? Or do you think she should have given them another chance? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective. And if you enjoy powerful stories like this one, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss what's coming next.